All right, today we're going to talk about something called gastroparesis. We're going to break down one of the most powerful ways to manage it, and honestly, it all boils down to how and when you eat.
So let me ask you this. Do you ever feel totally stuffed after just a few bites of food? Or, struggle with that bloating and nausea that just seems to hang around long after you've eaten? If any of that sounds familiar, well, you might be dealing with a condition called gastroparesis.
The name literally means stomach paralysis, which sounds pretty intense, right? Basically, it's a chronic condition where your stomach just takes way too long to empty out. The nerves that are supposed to tell your stomach muscles to push food along just aren't working right. The result? Think of it like a huge traffic jam right in your digestive system.
So what's really going on inside what we call a slow stomach? Well, to get a handle on the best strategy, we've got to look at the science here, specifically why the volume, the sheer amount of food you eat, matters so much.
And this really gets to the heart of it. When you look at the research, one thing becomes super clear. The volume of what's in your stomach is the number one thing that determines how fast it empties. I mean, it's just a simple mechanical problem, right? A huge meal is a massive workload for a stomach that's already struggling. It just creates this bottleneck.
And this is where you can see the key difference. On one side, you have a large meal. It just completely overwhelms the system, increases all that pressure, and triggers those awful symptoms we talked about, the bloating, the nausea. But check out the other side. When you break it down into smaller, more frequent meals, you're putting way less strain on your stomach. It can empty so much more easily, and that usually means way fewer symptoms. This one simple change can be an absolute game changer.
And here's a little bit of good news, which is always nice to hear. Turns out, liquids often have a much easier time emptying out than solids do. Sometimes they can pass through with just a little help from gravity. And that's a really important clue for figuring out how to manage this whole thing.
All right, so we've got the science down, but how do we turn all that information into a real, actionable plan? I mean, knowing why something works is great, but actually using that knowledge to take back some control, that's the real goal here. So let's talk about this small, frequent meal strategy.
So, what's the magic number? Well, most of the clinical guidelines out there point to shifting away from those 3 big meals a day to something more like 6 to 8 smaller ones. And listen, this isn't about eating less food overall. It's all about spreading your nutrition out so it's way more manageable for your system to handle.
So the strategy really boils down to 3 simple steps. Step 1 is pretty obvious. Eat smaller portions. Step 2, you've got to eat more often, right? That's how you get all your calories in. And number 3, and honestly, this one might be the most important, you have to listen to your own body. Your tolerance can literally change from day to day. So paying close attention it's essential. Okay, so what does one of these small meals actually look like? Let's dive in and build a gastroparesis-friendly plate. Think of this as your food toolkit. You've got 3 golden rules to keep in mind. You're looking for foods that are low in fat, low in fiber, and made of really small particles. And you might be asking, why those 3 things? Well, it's pretty simple. Both fat and fiber are things that naturally slow down digestion, which is the exact opposite of what we want here. And smaller food particles, that just means less work for your stomach to do to break things down. Think of this table as your cheat sheet for the grocery store. You'll start to see a pattern pretty quickly. For grains, for example, we're going for things that are easier to digest, like white rice instead of whole grains. When it comes to protein, lean choices like ground chicken or fish are going to be your friend, way better than tough or fatty cuts of meat. And that same idea carries over to veggies and fruits. Well-cooked and skinless is the way to go. You want to avoid anything that's super raw or fibrous. So what does a day of eating actually look like? Well, you might start your morning with something like cream of wheat with some banana slices. Then for lunch, maybe you have some ground chicken with white rice and some really well-cooked carrots. And for a snack, how about some low-fat yogurt with canned peaches? You see the pattern here, right? It's all about making these smart swaps. It's not about feeling deprived. But look, managing gastroparesis effectively, it's about more than just the food on your plate. So let's talk about some of the daily habits that can really set you up for success.
Okay, these habits go hand in hand with your diet. First up, chew your food really well. I mean, digestion starts in your mouth, so you're basically doing some of your stomach's job for it before the food even gets there. Next, after you eat, try to sit upright for at least an hour. You're just letting gravity do its thing and help move things along. A gentle walk after a meal can also be a huge help. And here's a great tip. Stay hydrated, but do it between your meals. That way you're not filling up your stomach with a bunch of liquid while you're trying to digest food. It's a really smart move.
But let's be real. What about the bad days, the flare-ups? Because they're gonna happen. And when those symptoms get really severe, you don't just try to power through it. The safest and honestly the most effective approach is to use what's called a staged diet to get back on track. So this is your roadmap back to feeling better. You start at stage 1, which is liquids only. We're talking broth, maybe some diluted juice, just giving your whole system a complete rest. Then, as you start to feel a little better, you can move on to stage 2. This is where you gently add back some soft, low-fat foods. Think pudding, crackers, a simple soup. And from there, you can finally work your way back to your regular stage 3 maintenance diet, those small, low-fat, low-fiber meals. It's a clear, safe path to get you back on your feet. You know, there's a quote that I think just perfectly captures the whole mindset here. It says, "The goal isn't restriction for restriction's sake. It's more about symptom management and proper nutrition." And that really is the key, isn't it? This is about empowering yourself to work with your body, not constantly fighting against it. So, that really brings us to the final question, the one for you to think about. With all these tools and strategies in your back pocket, how can you start to reclaim your day one small meal at a time?